Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Iridium Jazz Club here in New York City. Guitarist Larry Coryell has been no stranger in fusing both the jazz world as well as the rock world in his guitar style, spanning some 50 years. As you might know, this gentleman has played with some of the who's who of jazz greats, ranging from the great Chico Hamilton to Miles Davis, as well as tonight he's reuniting with two very dear friends he's played with well over 40 years, the great Lenny White on drums, as well as Victor Bailey on bass. We sat down earlier and we talked about how rock and roll formed a very important part of his musical psyche, which led him to play guitar, as well as reflect on some of his great important musical influences. And we also sat down and reflected on the great Chico Hamilton. As you might know, when Larry moved to New York in 1965, he had the honor and privilege of recording and touring and performing with the great drummer. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sounds of Larry Coryell live here on the Pace Report here at the Iridium here in New York City. Larry, one of the things that you brought to guitar was your youth, and when I mean by that, your early roots of rock, which fused into jazz. Tell me about your psyche when the guitar came to you when you were growing up in Washington.
Well, I was originally studying piano, taking private lessons, encouraged by my parents, especially my mother, and I enjoyed it, but when I became aware of the guitar, I was attracted to that. And the first music I heard on the guitar was country and western and rock and roll. But what I didn't realize is that when I heard jazz, even though it didn't sound connected with country and western and rock and roll, it was connected in a subtle way because they all had the blues in common.
So blues pretty much is a part of American roots music, but rock and roll, in the late 50s and 60s, you had this inundation of musicians that were using different and incorporating different styles of guitar, pickups and things of that nature. Who were some of the first people that you were digging?
Whoever was the guitar player in Earl King's band. And I loved the guitar player in Bobby Bland's band. I thought those guys, the way that those guys would play the instrument, I was much more subtle and much more hip, and I was attracted to that, more to that, and less to people like Dwayne Eddy and, you know, other guitar players, Lonnie Mack. I mean, I like the more subtle stuff that those cats were doing, and I would go to their gigs and ask them questions.
So, how did jazz kind of come into play?
I had a jazz teacher early on, around the age of 16. He taught me all the chords. He taught me how to do chord melodies. And then he let me borrow some of his records, and I never gave them back. They were Tal Farlow and Johnny Smith and some early Les Paul before he started doing multi-tracking. And I really learned a lot from those records, especially Tal Farlow.
What was it about Tal Farlow that stuck out? And I know also Wes Montgomery was a big deal.
Well,
also.
Wes came later. I didn't realize how closely connected both Tal and Wes were to Charlie Christian. I didn't get, and I also liked Barney Kessel because of his connection with Charlie Christian. He knew Charlie Christian, but Tal Farlow was like, he was playing like Bird. That's what killed me. I didn't know that that's what he was playing like. I discovered that later, but his lines, man, the way he would improvise just killed me. But Wes was really overall the greatest. I think he is the greatest jazz guitarist. Victor and I, we were driving to the motel last night. Angel Eyes came on. I said, sounds like Barry Galbraith. And I listened a little bit more. I said, damn, man, that's Wes. And Victor was remarking how relaxed it was. Wes was very relaxed.
Let's talk about very important figure of your life passed away this past November.
Paco.
Yeah. Chico
Oh,
was.
you mean Chico? Well, yeah, Chico. He was my first band leader. I got my break with him. He was like my daddy. Very sad.
Chico did some things with you. In fact, you had some very important shoes to fill because Gabor Szabo left, and you brought a whole nother flavor to his quartet.
Yeah, I had to develop my own voice very quickly because I just didn't want to copy Gabor. Guess who was on that first gig?
Who was it?
Ron Carter. Ron Carter was on that first gig. The first gig in the band was Tony Ortega on alto, myself and Gabor, and Chico, and then Ron Carter.
What was it like collaborating with Gabor? Because that was another beast.
Well, he was really a mentor. He developed an awareness of taste in music to me. And he told me that the music was more important than the instrument. He said the music came first. And I hopefully have never forgotten that.
When did you really decide, and when did you figure out your own style? What year and what group?
I would say, I can't tell you exactly what year, but within the first 3 years that I had moved to New York, I definitely was conscious of developing my own voice, and that's when I did it, I'd say between 65 and 67.
What was it about the rock element, and what was it about the jazz element that you both compared and contrasted brought to your style?
Well, I wanted to be primarily coming out of a foundation of jazz, but at that time I felt that jazz needed a little shot in the arm from new ideas and new energy, and I found that in a lot of the rock and pop music that was popular at the time.
Because, I mean, it was you, it was Pat Martino, it was George Benson. You guys were the new wave of jazz guitarists.
Oh, those are great cats, man. I love those guys, man. And I'm fortunate that I can count them among my best friends. I mean, George found his own way to adapt to the new sounds and the new concepts, and so did Pat. That one record Pat made called Joyous Lake is a total Kenwood Denard, total masterpiece.
Yeah. As a leader, you have gone in many, many directions. In fact, tonight you're back with Victor and as well as Lenny. What is it about today's jazz artists and jazz guitarists that you're seeing that are carrying on what you're doing, but also kind of lacking? Because you're a clinician also. You teach also.
Sure, yeah. I really like just about everybody if they can play, regardless of regardless of what time period their concept is rooted, because music is music. Basically, if somebody's doing something good, I really like it. But I particularly like Vic Juris, and I particularly like Peter Bernstein, and I love this kid named Gil Paris. Are you hip to him? Yeah. He's really... We did a gig the other night, man. I was floored because he did what I like to do and what Victor likes to do. We like to take jazz things and put a different twist on them. Maybe write another line on top of something, or maybe make it a funk thing, because the funk feels so good, And it also makes it sound more contemporary. In other words, we want to play the music that we want to play. We don't want to play the music that our parents would have liked. We have to do that. Pat Martino says it in his biography. He said, kids today should not be trying to play bebop like I did, because that was a reflection of my upbringing in my time, in my early life. They should really reflect the times in which they are living, and I completely agree with that.
They hail you as the father of progressive jazz guitar. How do you feel about that label? Because there were a lot of great guitarists.
There's a lot of great guitar, Pat Martino and George Benson, but it's nice to be included. It's nice to be defined like that, because I take it as a compliment, and humbly I take it, and with great appreciation.
know, last month we lost a great flamenco guitarist and a very dear friend of yours,
Yeah.
Paco de Luica.
Yeah.
Tell me about the first time you guys met, and also how he impacted the flamenco guitar.
Well, he was and is the greatest flamenco guitar player I ever heard. But he was doing the same stuff that we were trying to do. He was taking his flamenco foundation and bringing in other elements to make his concept more progressive. And he had impeccable technique and a great spirit. And he kept the tail of a rattlesnake inside his guitar for good luck. And if he would have stopped smoking, he'd still be alive. He was only 66. But he was a fantastic. When we were on tour, I felt like I was with a head of state when we traveled through Spain, because they threw rose petals in his path when he would get off a bus or something. He deserved it.
What's jazz music mean to you?
It means life. It means the blues. It means emotion. It means America's original art form. It's the best of America. It's got such a rich tradition. It's an incredible art form, and I'm just fortunate that I've been given the opportunity to try to learn how to play it, because you're always learning, always progressing.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Iridium Jazz Club here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the talented Larry Coryell for his time, as well as Victor Bailey, as well as Lenny White. Also the staff and management here at the Iridium Jazz Club for their warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.